Welcome to our podcast. You're listening to Reveal by Ixon, www.ixonmusic.com.
So, ready?
Ready.
Okay.
Hey.
We need a cheerleader here.
So, welcome everybody to our podcast, Why Complain When You Can Whine? Making sense of the nonsense, 3 professional women attempting to make sense of toxic nonsense while drinking wine. Can't even see oh, there it is. I am Dr. Larman, Psych Dr. J, Jody, any, all of the above. I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of California. Therefore, this is for entertainment and some psychoeducational purposes only. There is never any therapeutic relationship given or implied. So, and just a brief little snippet about me. I was in a 10-year relationship with a diagnosed NPD, and I am now 4 years thriving. I don't know what that octave was. 4 years thriving in my narc-free life. I am drinking Roiho today from its Kirkland brand because everybody says it's really, really good. So we shall see. And my cup says, my wine glass, it's whatever my wine sippy cup says, not a day over fabulous. My sister gave it to me for my birthday because it is true. Heather.
Totally true. I'm Heather. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Colorado. I'm also a domestic violence survivor. I've been free of that sociopath since 2020. And yes, single and happy and loving it. Today, I am drinking Folly of the Beast. It came from, so I'm part of this like wine, or I was part of a wine club, and they would like send me 4 bottles of wine a month. And this is one of them that sent, I did not pick this for the label. It just came like this, but I thought it was kind of weird. And so I wanted to try it. And it is a really good Pinot Noir. So that's me.
I am
Ashley.
Paige, and I am a single mom, domestic violence, and SA survivor. I am the founder of Loving Single, and I have been in toxic narcissistic relationships my entire life. And so this, I created Loving Single as a way to heal myself, to find myself, and to learn to love my life being single.
Yay.
So, tonight we have Black Girl Magic Rosé.
Oh,
Yes.
I like that.
It will always be a Moscato or a rosé or a bubbly for me.
So you like, what is it? Stella Rosa, I think, isn't that bubblies? Like carbonate.
I don't really like Stella
sparkly.
Rosa. I've had it, but I like I love you'll see a lot of my like Honey Meads, my local wines, and different Moscatos and rosés or ice wines because they're like syrup.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, I'm not a I was told when I was pregnant with my son, after I had my son, the doctor told me that for my cholesterol, I should drink some red wine. And I only drank white or rosé. And I was like, yeah, really? And he's like, yeah, it has to be red. So I kind of, what would be the word, made the switch. And yeah, I can drink a dry rosé. I can't drink anything sweet. And Moscato is like, I can't do it.
Too sweet. Yeah. I'm a dry,
well,
spicy person.
Well, I mean, it depends on if I'm eating something, because I was a private chef for so long. So if I'm having dinner, it's not going to be a Moscato. So cheers.
Oh, I did not know that. Look, I learned something new about you today.
Cheers. Moscato reminds me of Mogen David or Manischewitz wine, which is a Jewish wine that probably a lot of younger people don't know about anymore because now they have real expensive, real good kosher wines. But it used to only be Mogen David or Manischewitz, which is about like cough syrup with a lot of sugar. Is probably the best way to describe it. It is so disgusting. It's a taste all its own. Yeah, that would definitely be an acquired taste that I don't ever care to acquire.
Mm. All right, ladies. So
What are we talking about?
I have a question for, well, a topic for tonight because it's been crazy on my heart and it's been all over in the news. So women's rights, what's happened the last week with Mahsa Amini and this insane explosion of the women's rights movement that's happening in Iran. Now, the reason that this is one affects all of us as women. And I think especially as this has triggered me to new heights as far as a DV survivor, violence against women, watching the morality police beat women in the streets and for a hijab or for them cutting their hair. This is something that I think the whole world of women is feeling right now, but also for those of us who have survived abuse, the control, the manipulation, the twisting of everything, I think this hits home for all of us. And it's something I want to talk about. Because I think all of us as women right now, I felt sick to my stomach all week long, like just randomly like breaking down in tears all week long. And I think that this is something that would be a great topic of discussion. It is not something that we should overlook, but also processing what that means for femininity and womanhood and a new rise of women's rights and human rights and thoughts about that.
Well, that kind of goes along with what's happening in Afghanistan now too, is where they're taking away all the rights that the women were given and making them wear not just the hijab, but the whole, what's it called? It starts with a B, not burqa. What is it? Not a burqa, but they want them to wear the whole thing, the face covering, everything. They don't want them they're stopping them from going to school now. They don't want them to get an education. They're going and taking away all the rights in, I think it's Afghanistan, and I don't know if it's other places as well, but it does seem like that we are going backwards worldwide in any kind of women's rights issues.
Totally. I mean, even if we look at the Roe versus Wade being overturned, the concept of women not even feeling like we're even considered human anymore is like, it's not my body, it's not my choice. I'm going to be suppressed and told what to do. I'm going to have to ask for permission. You feel like you break free from, at least like for a lot of women, they break free from toxic relationships and then they're in another toxic relationship with their government or their religion. And it's just this constant control. And, the simple fact that all of these things had been given back to the women. I think it was 1976 was when the veil was outlawed. And then, like you said, we're going backwards to where the morality police told the women we're cracking down on the hijab and everything. And it's just one of those things that as women, how do we process this for our mental health? What are the best steps for us to take? Those are my questions, is how do we raise our young girls? How do we band together in support? What are we supposed to do, especially for those of us that are living in, the Western world and we're not in these places? How do we offer support? how do we get involved?
Well, I honestly think it's not just because we're in the Western world, this doesn't apply to us, because it is starting to run into the Western world as well. So what really is frightening to me is the women that see no problem with it. They don't see that there's an issue at all. Like, okay, so for example, and I'm stretching this, but so you have to wear a hijab, who cares? It's like, you're okay basically with a man or males telling females what they can and cannot do. And they obviously are, because look at what happened with Roe v. Wade. And there are a lot of women that are okay with it, that are fine with it. And they don't even see the point of a male having control over you. So it's not just the abortion issue. It is the males now have control, and your body autonomy has been taken away from you. And you're okay with that. So it's not just what's, people think, well, it's happening over there, so it's not us. But it is. It's happening over there, but it's also happening. I mean, I know she died. The one that you were, I'm sorry,
Mahsa
I don't know her.
Amini.
Yeah, she died like what, an hour or so after they took her into custody?
Well, so they took her into custody. They literally dragged her off the streets while she was with her family, physically, violently forced her inside of a van, took her for mental rehabilitation, and locked her in a room. The people outside of the room could hear her screaming. We're trying to break into the room. Once she came out, they walked her out. She collapsed on the floor afterwards. They rushed her to the hospital. She was in a coma for 2 days and then died.
But this all, initially they brought her to the hospital. That wasn't very long after they had her.
No, they literally had her in custody, privately beat her, put her out in a public room. You can see it on camera. She's walking to the chair and then just boom, drops. Then rush her to the hospital. Yeah. And it was confirmed that from video footage, she was wearing her hijab and it wasn't incorrectly. So it was just she was the chosen one that was yanked off the street.
And she was with her family.
Yeah, they were traveling. Yeah.
So
were you gonna say something? Okay, I thought I heard
this is what I, what I would, everything that is, I'm so tired. So give my brain a second to catch up with my mouth. But there is, has been a lot of stuff going on socially for women in the world. And then all the other stuff, Black Lives Matter, things that happened socially over the last couple of years that are very, very big. And so it feels so huge right now. And I always just encourage my clients to, talk about how they're feeling about these things, talk about it with their kids in an age appropriate way, and check in with them on how they're feeling about these things that are happening in the world. Like Mr. Rogers has said, look for the people that are helping, and find a way to attach yourself to them and see if you can help too. And also take some fucking breaks from this, from absorbing and exposing yourself to news over and over again and the story over and over again. And remember to take care of yourself, because secondary trauma is a very, very real thing. And to replay that story of what happened to her, even for yourself, is traumatizing. And then we add on the fun layer of that we've also been victimized ourselves, and we've also experienced some level of oppression ourselves as women. It ignites what I love to call feminist rage that I've been experiencing since all the abuse that I endured in my last relationship. And so I get that there's like a drive to solve a problem, and there's a lot of anger behind that. There's also a lot of trauma and triggers and things that are lighting up right now, which means you need to take breaks and take care of yourself and, limit exposure to the news and everything that's happening for a second. And then there's going to be just this sense of like fucking hopelessness, right? Like we're going backwards. What's even the fucking point at this, And so like all three of these things combined, can have you in this like whirlwind of like depression to anger to trauma to like, so self-care, really take care of yourself, look for the people that are helping, and take breaks from exposing yourself to the news.
And there's something called compassion fatigue. And that is so real right now. It's like a lot of what Heather's talking about is that there are so many issues that you care about or are supposed to care about. And if you don't care about them, then there's all this pressure, like, well, how come you didn't talk about that? And how TikTok's really big for that. You can do a video on narcissists and they'll say, well, why don't you talk about BPD? Or you could do a video on treatments and they'll say, well, why didn't you talk about this? It's like, you can only do so much and you have to take a break. You end up getting compassion fatigue, which is you stop caring about anything after a while because you can't care about everything. So when you find that you're caring, there's so many things right now to care about that we end up just stopping and becoming not apathetic, but just kind of like, just don't come at me with this right now. So it is important, like Heather said, to take these breaks and to take self-care. Now, going back to what happened there and it provoking all of this anger and stuff, another thing is because of being a victim of domestic violence, these things are going to be, it's kind of a I don't want to say, how can I put this? These things are going to be taken where this is not okay. There is not enough action. We need to do something. And a lot of people around you aren't going to feel the same way because they haven't gone through it. Like an example that I can give, if this makes any sense, is I have a client, they're going through long COVID, really bad. And this client is like pissed as all hell about everybody now not wearing masks and saying the pandemic's over and it doesn't matter if they're all vaccinated. No one gives a shit. And it's like, okay, I understand that this person is going through it and thinks that everybody, like, people are tired. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but people are tired. But you're feeling it more because it personally affects you. So sometimes until it personally affects someone, sadly, they're not going to care.
Well, so here's the thing is, when I'm asking these questions, I'm asking for women everywhere, not specifically for myself. And the thing is like, this affects all women. And so although this one incident is very sad, I think what it is in general is that we're realizing that this happens all day, every day. We look at the statistics of domestic violence, a woman is beaten every 9 seconds. So, and I don't even know, that was like an old study. So it probably is more frequent now.
I think it's more frequent. Yeah.
And so, and if we look at the statistics of how many women have been SA'd or have experienced domestic violence, I'm not diminishing what happened in 2020 in America and the civil rights movement and something, but women are the majority in the world. So as a percentage, this affects the majority, and somehow the majority is the one that is being silenced, controlled, beaten, and killed. So that's, I think that's the issue, is like,
it absolutely it absolutely affects. This is what I find really frustrating, is that it does affect every single woman, because we are all women, and that's the one thing we have in common, is that we are women. And if you want to just go by, you want to say people who can give birth or people who have a uterus or people who identify as women, I don't care. If you identify as a woman, this concerns you as well. So anybody that identifies as a woman, this concerns them. But not everybody who identifies as a woman cares, because it hasn't happened to them. And what I mean by that is, one, I'm going to go in a different direction for a second. It takes, and this statistic has held true. I first heard it in 1997. And ever since I've kept up with it. And recently I asked someone who's still doing domestic, because I used to do domestic violence assessments. And I talked to someone who still works in domestic violence. And they said, yes, the statistic is still true, that it takes 7 times of leaving and coming back and leaving and coming back until they leave for good. And that includes getting killed by their perpetrator, by their beater. Now, the sad thing is, we are in a society, and a lot of societies are like ours, and a lot of societies are even worse than ours, where typically men are getting paid more. Men are the financial strength, if you will. Men hold the woman's purse strings, a home, food, insurance, all of those things. So you're kind of, in a sense, being held captive. How many people have we heard from that wanted to leave their relationship so badly, but had zero money, no place to go? And how are they going to get their kids or keep their kids? And that's not to say that men are horrible beings, because there are men that are actually very good people. My son is male, and I'm hopefully, trying to raise him as a very good person. And I know men that have been abused and their kids taken away from them by the woman. But in terms of overall power, men have that over women. And that is where, until that can change in some way, I was very lucky that I never combined my money with my ex's. And I was already, when I met him, I had a home, I was independent, and I could take care of myself. So for me, it was an easier way for me to leave, is I didn't have to worry about any of that. I was lucky. I was privileged that I, had that. And a lot of people don't. So a lot of these women that want to make change, want to do things, they're being controlled because men have the power. And then you go to countries that are especially Muslim countries, and men absolutely will tell you that they have the power and they will control the women. So when you're in a place where women are literally not even second-class citizens, women are just there, how do you get women to then want to fight back?
So would you say that, as far as the percentage goes, based on your lady's experience, that the women who, I hate using the word submissive in this type of like indoctrination and mentality, is because they've been conditioned to be that way?
There's a conditioning that happens. It's also, they also have, I would say religious conditioning happens. And then in other situations there's like a collective learned helplessness that happens, right? And I think that drives a lot of the being frozen and not really fighting back, and just kind of accepting things that in a lot of people's eyes is just fucking unacceptable. But again, going back to the original kind of thought, like, what the fuck do we do, and how do we manage our triggers, and sort of like the bigger meta trauma that has happened. We still have to come back to ourselves first before we can make any changes. And the nice thing about there's nothing fucking really nice about horrible things that happen. But if I'm going to try to reframe this for people who are having a hard time and really going through it and feeling kind of lost as what to do next, we got to remember, like, big movements aren't started by people just kind of by nothing happening, right? Like, something fucking horrible usually has to happen before a big movement can start. People don't, movements don't start by people obeying the laws either. So at some point, there's going to be a huge loss that leads to a big movement that, in my hope, changes the way most societies in the world are appreciating women. That's my hope. I'm just going to hang my hat on that because that's what keeps me sane during the day, you know?
Here's a list
that I have to come back to. Go ahead, Jody.
Here's a list of the 10 top patriarchal societies. Patriarchal. Let me see.
You try now, Heather. What is it?
The patriarchal. Is it kickle or is it just
it's the 10 countries. 10 countries where life is worse for women. These 10 countries are India, Yemen, Iraq, Pakistan, Nepal, Peru, Turkey, Sudan, Afghanistan, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Can you guess the next one?
No.
The United States.
Oh, wow.
It says, while things aren't all bad for women in the United States, there's one thing Americans are seriously lacking in comparison with other high-income countries: guaranteed paid maternity leave. In the US, employees are only required to give women 12 weeks of unpaid time off after having a baby. The only two other nations where this is the case is Switzerland and Papua New Guinea. This is a problem that affects a significant chunk of American women, and half of all first-time mothers receive no paid leave.
Yeah. So the United States made the top 10 worst.
No, it didn't. It made like honorable mention.
I actually, to a degree, I believe that, because of what I see happening here. I mean, no, it's not Iran. No, it's not Afghanistan or any of those places, but I'm not comparing it, but I can understand why it made honorable mention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
now, luckily, I took a women's studies class at UCLA before I graduated. And I graduated in 1992. So I was in my class during the riots that we had, the Rodney King riots. And people were in my women's studies class at that time. People were complaining that women didn't get to do anything. And I was like, but wait a minute, have you tried? We need to try. You can't just blanket say, like one person was saying, well, women can't be fighter pilots in the Army. And I said, okay, how do you know that? Well, there's none. And I said, okay, but how do you know that women aren't allowed? There's a difference between women not being able to pass the exam, be physically able to, or whatever, and not being allowed to. Those are two different things. Like, women are allowed to be firefighters, but they have to pass the same exact test as a male. And I think that's fair. I think that's very fair. But things have changed a lot since 1992. I think we had, it sounds weird because it was 30 years ago? Oh my God. I graduated college 30 years ago. Because things have improved in some ways, but they have really gotten worse in a lot of ways, actually gotten worse recently. Things were kind of seemed to be opening up for women, and now they're starting to be taken away again. I know growing up, I was never told by my parents that I could not do something because I was a girl. I was never told, don't try this, don't do that. It was like aim for doing whatever it is that you want to do. I don't know if parents are doing that now. And if parents are empowering their daughters. I'm not saying they're not, but you see such a divide right now with, and again, not to use this word, but using it, submissive women. Women that are
Maybe we could change it to complacent for some.
complacent
Some
women, that's true too.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a huge shift, and I've been noticing it a lot in the dialogue that's been started, and that I've started. Some of it is this sense of women were given a certain level of freedom that, in honest regard, are less than our own, the God-given rights that we should have. But there was a push from women once we were given this. And at that point is when the push came back of like, oh, no. We're only going to let you you're trying to cover too much ground. And like, no, like, no, we can't have a female president. No, we can't have this. No, let us remind you who's in charge. We're only going to let you go this far. And since you've had the audacity to go 100 yards farther than that, we're going to pull you back 500. It's
How
like
we gave you an inch and you took a mile.
Yeah.
And now you're going to be punished for it.
Yes. And I think Heather said something that reminded me. I mean, because let's be honest, all of this is on a larger scale, what each of us have experienced on our own personal scales in our toxic relationships. And the thing that I'm watching happening is, yes, we should absolutely fight for women's rights. Yes, we should absolutely speak out. But what happens in an abusive relationship when the victim gets pushed too far? What happens? I know.
Crime of passion.
Crime of passion,
Crime of
reactive
passion.
abuse. And so knowing that with psychology and therapy, I see like just having this certain level of awareness, it's kind of like, oh shit. Oh shit. Because that's usually what happens is something horrible happens, like Heather says. We get pushed into this movement. Oh, we're not going to take this anymore. And then just like in 2020, now all of a sudden there's riots in the streets, good people, innocent people are dying because it's not being done wisely and strategically, and it's being done it's a crime of passion and
emotional.
Yeah. And so I just wonder, like, at what point in history are we going to stop and say, okay, this shit doesn't work. How do we do this in a manner that serves us? I mean, like,
look at what's happening too. Whether you like her or not, Jill Biden and the big uproar of calling her doctor. Now, do you think if that was a male, there would be any question at all?
Oh, his wife. Yeah.
I don't care how you think about them as at all, but just the fact that she is a female and she is a doctor of education and she earned that title. Do you think that there would be any pushback if that was a male? I don't think so. I don't, because I've seen it myself in so many places that I have been. I am Miss, and you're not a real doctor. And yet there are social workers and nurse practitioners and just anybody that is a male being called doctor all the time, and they don't correct them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like a woman, like, how dare you?
Oh yeah.
Want to be called doctor?
What are your credentials? What are your credentials? Where did you graduate?
And then you have other women. The problem that I'm saying too is you have other women. You have the Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert and women like that are just like, just because they don't like her, I'm going to totally disrespect your title, meaning I'm going to disrespect you as a woman. Like, I'm not even going to look at you as a fellow woman and respect that title. So if other women aren't even respecting other women, how are men going to want to, you know what I mean? It's like, if women don't support women, if women don't lift other women up, it's very rare. It's not unheard of, but it's very rare that a man's going to step in and be like, I will lift you up and screw all the other women. You know, that's the thing, is I know there's a big push, and I love seeing women lifting up other women, but instead you're getting, I mean, we all saw this victim blaming, victim shaming, blaming the woman, not the man.
Oh my God.
This
So I
happened
think as
with-
long,
I mean, I know we're not talking about celebrity bullshit right now, but
Oh
it's
no,
happened with us.
well, the topic, but here's that's what the topic is, just women's rights. Like, bring up the celebrity bullshit. Cause I mean, we just saw some shit happen this week with celebrities. So you go right ahead, Heather, bring that
Yeah,
up.
that's what I was gonna bring up. I was gonna bring up the whole Adam Levine thing, and there's obviously, and I predicted it as soon as it happened. There was gonna be a split of people who were holding his dumbass accountable and people that were blaming the women. Well, she knew he was married. She knew better.
She's doing this, and you know what
For
really,
attention.
yeah, she's doing this for clout. She's doing this. I mean, listen, I was in a relationship with a married man. I knew he was married, but I saw her follow-up video, and it was this very similar situation to mine, where he told me, we're separated, we're getting a divorce, like, we don't live together, like, you know, I wasn't intending on dating again, and you just kind of, like, I just met you, it was like a godsend. And I was like, are you sure? Like, no, we're totally done. And then the moment I found out he and his wife were in her eyes perfectly fine, I was done.
Right.
But somehow I was a home wrecker and a hoe and a slut and all of these things, and it was my fault, and you knew he was married. And so I was watching her testimony, like her telling the story, and there's all these women that are like, shame on you, you're doing this for clout. And I'm like, she knew she was going to be called a hoe, she knew she was going to be called a whore and a home wrecker. Do you think that she, like,
yeah, and her friend, someone she trusted, was trying to sell the story to the tabloids, so she just got ahead of it and said, I guess I'm just going to come out with this, because she was just going to let it go. But then, like, I mean, come on, for anyone listening, listen to Maroon 5's songs. The fucking man is a cheater.
didn't he want to name his baby
after her?
After the mistress? I mean, the guy is a total douchebag. Like, all of his songs are douchey. All of his lyrics are douchey.
Okay, I want to bring something up. This is not me saying this, I'm just bringing this up. Didn't we hear the comment at one point of, well, he's just being, in this point, a single man?
Oh,
so,
is he just being a thing? Is this just a dude being a dude? Is this just boys will be boys? Is this what this is? Don't.
Right.
I'm drinking wine now. Don't say that.
Boys
shit.
will be boys. It's what they do. And you know what? Whether his wife stays with him or not, that is their own decision. That is none of our concern. Because what we're talking about isn't should they stay together in their own personal life, but it is that he did something, and who got the blame? The woman.
The scorned woman got the blame. The scorned woman always.
It's always the scorned woman.
Just put a fucking scarlet letter on there and just call her a scorned fucking woman and a hoe and a tramp and like all the things. Just,
well, what was it?
You know who's the main
Scarlet letter?
Women.
The scarlet letter went on the woman as an A. It didn't go on the man. Went on the woman.
Nope, you're muted, Ash.
There you go.
What I was saying.
You're muted, Ashley.
I got it. That's like the whole heart of this conversation is how fucking disgusted I am with current world events and throw in the fucking celebrity events. And let's just go ahead and add on to that the pre-chapter to what all three of us just experienced with a narcissistic, toxic man who acted like a person in a position of trust, who in reality was an abusive predator. And I am fucking pissed. I am done with this. That's why I feel so emotionally heightened, is because I feel like my entire life, with the exception of a handful of really good men, my dad being one of them, that I think that's one of the reasons why women feel so fucking defeated right now, is because we're looking around and we're saying, shit.
Mhm.
At this point, I have to like play checks and balances and decide, if you can't beat them, join them, or risk my life fighting for what's right.
I know what affects me a lot is, like I said, women tearing down other women. Women, because it doesn't necessarily affect them. They don't care. They're enabling. They're complacent and complicit because they're enabling. And they're also victim blaming, victim shaming. And it's, you're the problem. This person, these men are great and wonderful. So it's you, not them.
Hmm?
And if women tear other women down, that's what keeps this, why should women earn more money? Women should be at home taking care of the kids. So even if, let's say, even if things were nice and wonderful and your spouse is working and you're taking care of the kids and doing the home, you're still in power control because shit goes down and you don't have the money to leave.
Yep.
So
Have you all seen Handmaid's Tale?
No.
Whoa. Well, there's a feminist rage TV show that you both need to get caught up on.
That's kind of why I haven't
will love
watched it. That's kind of why I haven't, because when life
triggering
imitates art.
Yeah, but it's triggering as fuck, right? But it is really well written. And yes, it's absolutely terrifying and triggering. And there's this coming together of women that happens in this show to take back the things that are taken away from them, which is basically fucking everything.
I do fucking love that.
And so when you are watching, there's the feminist rage in these women that collectively start coming together to fight back, is so motivating. It was so motivating for me because I didn't start watching that show until I was going to court for all the DV shit with my ex. And I went to so many different court days because there were several different DV cases. And in that, while kind of like intermittently watching that show in between and getting caught up, I think it was like 3 seasons at the time that were out, I was so motivated, like absolutely enraged and triggered, but fucking motivated at the same time. So watch it. I encourage you both to watch it because we could have like a whole episode just on Handmaid's Tale because the new season just came out. I haven't started watching it yet, but whew, there's spicy.
The only reason I haven't, is because I hate when life is imitating art and you're kind of going, holy shit, how are people not fucking noticing it? But people are, everybody is, but no one, we do marches and things like that, but I feel like I feel like you said, Ashley, we made so many strides forward that we became a legitimate threat.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So they have to do something to neutralize that threat.
Yeah. And the only way for them to neutralize the threat is with force and violence.
Because and to distract us, right? Like they distract us with kind of some fear. Shit that, like it's
fear.
all a distraction.
And did you see the study that that came out? I don't know when it came out, but was that women are emotionally they are more emotionally intelligent and powerful than men. And
Oh,
there was
yeah.
a man that was talking about it. But something that kind of I wanted to touch on really quick is I think that the women who are fighting the women, just based off of my own personal experience, they are women who have in general, for the most part, have been victims of domestic violence and SA. However, I think to a degree that they have come to their own resolution that the cost of fighting for what is rightfully ours is not, it's not worth it to them to risk their own little comfortable yet painful life. For example, oh, Heather left. Bye, Heather.
I was like,
Wait a
wait a
minute.
minute. I stretched my screen and she was gone. I'm like, I made my screen bigger. How did she
Well-
leave?
We'll just keep going. But what I was going to say was that, for example, the man that I was dating that was married, come to find out, she was fully aware that he was having multiple affairs regularly. And she wanted him so badly that to her, it was a win to be the one he always came home to. So she was like, I am the bottom bitch, literally said this. I am the bottom bitch. I win because at the end of the day, he will get rid of each and every one of you and he will always come back to me. And then he'll always have full cycle rotation of women, but I am the long-term one. And she saw that as a victory. And I think to a degree, a lot of the women that are fighting the other women, it's the same concept and mentality of, well, at least I still hold a position, and that's why I'm going to see you, all of you other women, as the opposition, because I'm unwilling to sacrifice my position with where I am right now, my comfort, because I know that if I fight against the status quo of the men who are in power, and if I go to fight for my rights, I risk losing 100% of them rather than only being able to maintain 60.
I also wonder about their own parents' relationship,
Yes.
what they grew up with. And as far as you know, was she working or was he supporting her?
He had a very cushy life for her. She had a very
So-
cushy life. So it was, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to work. You can buy whatever you want and stay quiet. I'm going to go have my fun. Shut up. And you decide if your liposuction and your plastic surgery, you decide if you want to get rid of that, because you can have all of those things as long as you just stay fucking quiet about it. Welcome back.
I do think that there are a lot, sadly, of women like that.
Yeah.
Well, he's taking care of my every
It's the
need
best part.
pretty much,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So why would I give that up? Because he's not buying and doing all this shit for you guys. Yeah, he is, but it's only temporary and it's not taking from me. The minute it takes from her, the minute he stops supporting her, then she'll care. And sadly, what you're going to find, because this happens with flying monkeys, is wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
What? Where did, when, how, what? It's like,
Yep.
no, you were warned. You saw the signs. Now you're acting as if this is a big surprise that this happened. So sadly, sometimes women do it to themselves. I don't like to say that, but they do.
Would you say
you're
it's an instance of gaslighting ourselves?
Mhm.
yeah.
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 Mhm.
I think that this is I hate to say this, but I feel less optimistic than I wish I felt that this is something that's going to change in a positive way soon.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree with you.
I mean, look at, there was the women's marches, and what did people talk about? The stupid little hats. That's like the thing that's remained out of those women's marches. If you ask anyone about it, they would, oh, the ones with the pink word that I don't like hat. Yeah. You know, the whole message or anything, it's done, it's over, it's gone. If people even remember it at all. So I think honestly, one of the things like this, what we're doing now, I think calling out toxic shit, calling out this kind of behavior, talking about it, discussing it. I wouldn't mind next time discussing, because it kind of goes along with this. I wouldn't mind next time talking about flying monkeys and people who totally support the toxic person while blaming the victim. Like we discussed, who is the worst, for lack of a better description, who is the worst in that scenario? The person doing the abuse, or the people who are supporting the person doing the abuse and blaming the victim for being abused?
Yeah, we'll definitely have to table that for
Next
a
time.
whole other episode.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That is a whole other time, because we are now at almost an hour.
Well, I think that we could do that for, you know, if you're open to it, is next episode, you know, next episode where we're talking about the people who are supporting and defending the behavior of the people who hold a position of power and, you know, abuse and control, and defend it and then attack the victim. Because I've seen that all week long of people. I mean, I've even seen women coming up in my comments on my videos talking about, how dare I speak out? One, I don't live in Iran. And two, why do I get to talk about this when I'm not the one who died? Well, if I were the one that died, I wouldn't be talking about this. And by default, I'm a woman, so I'm allowed to talk about this. But, you know, just like, of course you're making it about you, you narcissist, is what I got some comments as. But meanwhile, the women in Iran and the men in Iran are commenting like, oh my God, thank you for being our voice. So I think that that's like an excellent thing to talk about next time, is these people who have nothing to do with the situation, who find it necessary to defend the behavior of the abuser. And like I said earlier, that's all this is the abuse, the narcissistic behavior at a humongous grand scale. It's the exact same thing. There is no difference. The only difference is that the people in power in places like Iran and Afghanistan and Nepal, like you were saying, they're using their monkeys to perform their tasks rather than doing it themselves.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the therapist in me just can't help but say this. Take some breaks from reading all those comments and being on TikTok and social media and absorbing all of this stuff too. Like, yes, we need to be a voice. We need to stand up and not be complacent. And we need to take care of ourselves, or we will not have the energy to fight back, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Balance that. Balance that.
Well, and I think that I've definitely needed that reminder, and I think we all need that reminder, because it's something that we're so passionate about just as women. And then add in there the fact that we've survivors of abuse, that we know the feeling of being controlled. And like, I don't know if we haven't talked about this, maybe we can talk about this in a different episode, like how bad the control was down to what I was allowed to wear, what I was like, how I was allowed to do my makeup, like how I was allowed to like dance, you know? So there's so many things that like this whole situation triggers us. And so for those of us who have experience with certain levels of abuse and control, I mean,
And that's
your
Mhm.
mental health is like, my mental health, like with the whole situation, all three of us have experienced recently, and then still receiving chaos from the flying monkeys and, you know, getting cash apps for $1 telling to go buy integrity.
accountability. Accountability was 50%
And then
off.
seeing all this, your mental health goes like this.
It does. It does. Because it's constant, right? And you bring up coercive control and like the just the little fucking things that they do. And that's why I always try to kind of step into the shoes of the monkeys too, you know, and those who are really just kind of also victims of coercive control in a lot of ways. And just remember that some people just have a general ignorance, and I don't mean ignorant in the pejorative sense. I mean, some people literally just don't know, right? So I try to kind of remind myself of that too when it comes to like the victim blaming and the monkeys and things like that. Like there was a time when I was probably acting as a monkey, right? Like and believing the total bullshit about my exes, you know, and not having the rapport with them and feeling like I had it with him, right? And so it's like I that helps me, even if it's total bullshit, like even if they're just evil narcissists too, like he is, like, but it helps me to kind of try and step into a place of compassion for people's ignorance and hopefully what we're doing is educating and giving information and knowledge that can hopefully help them someday. And that's all. And in the meantime, self-care, ladies, we cannot fight a war if we're constantly focusing on the bullshit.
Heather, the one thing I'm gonna disagree with you on in my own personal is I don't have compassion for people who have actually been warned and given evidence. If you've been given evidence, undisputable evidence, and not gaslight, like, here's a picture of, that's not a picture of, yes, it is a picture of, that's not a picture of. I don't mean that. I mean evidence. Like texts and pictures and phone records. And I'm just going back to my own shit right now for a second. But when you are given evidence and the person's like, it's different with me. That's different with me. I have zero compassion. As a matter of fact, I'm sorry, this is the pettiness in me. I'm just like, okay.
I will agree with Jody on that.
Yeah,
Only
evidence is one thing, but ignorance is another. That's the ignorance is I will empathize with ignorance, but yeah, I don't.
Unless the ignorance is chosen ignorance in order to bypass the evidence.
Right.
In which case, I fully agree with Jody, because even when we had our discussion, for those of us, the listeners who have no idea what we're talking about, just go to the lovingsinglearmy.com/exposed. And when we presented evidence to people and they victim blamed you, I had a visceral reaction. It's like literally visceral, as though it were me.
Yeah.
For you. And those people, when I say I forgive them, all that means is that I will fucking release you, but I will have nothing to fucking do with you ever again. Because
all forgiveness means is I accept what happened. Doesn't mean I like it. Doesn't mean I'm okay with it. It means you are not going to have the power over me anymore.
Yeah.
It's done. Yeah.
But I had a visceral, like, mama sister reaction for you. And as far as those people are concerned, I just can't say anything right now.
Well, the nice thing is I will just keep focusing on those that were there that also had that reaction and were supportive of me, because there were looking back a lot more, I think, supportive people than non-supportive.
The non-supportive are always the loudest.
They're just the loud ones, but there weren't many of them. They were just the loudest.
Yeah.
When
No.
we discuss this, I've got a good story for you guys. When we start discussing our narc exes as well, I got some good stories. But I have a good one for this being warned, being presented with all the evidence. Yeah, so I'm petty that way.
Yeah.
I just can't wait till you go down.
Oh my God. And I will say this because I think this is ending on a positive note. For as defeated as I felt this last week, seeing what's happening, if before I mentioned that all this is what we've each individually experienced on a small scale, but on a grand scale, then it does give me hope seeing what the three of us have experienced the last several weeks, because although we've faced hell with the confrontation of exposing the abuser and then being tactical and wise and not being reactive, but actually responding to the information and to the abuse and doing it mindfully with intention and not acting in our emotion, but acting in our logic and in our intuition, we have seen a significant change. Because although we don't know what he's doing on the inside of his little community, think of how many people that we've positively impacted and prevented this type of former behavior happening again to. So I will say that does give me hope, because if we could see this change on a smaller scale, then that does mean by proxy that it's possible to see it on a larger scale if it's done correctly, not in a reactive abuse. Because we did respond. There were emotions, but I got to tell you, there was something so badass and empowering about what the three of us are doing together.
We were so grounded in that, all three of us. Like, you're right. While there were emotions happening, we were still able to stay grounded in the focus and the missions and the purpose and the logic behind it. And we did not falter or let our emotions, because if I had let, honest to God, I mean, if I had let my emotions get the best of me while those, like that slew of text messages were coming in at me, if I were to react emotionally to that, it would have gone, the whole mission would have gone to shit.
And can you imagine what it would have been like for us to deal with that individually without the support of the three of us? Fuck. Jinx. But I think that was so, I gotta tell you that this has been one of the most badass, empowering experiences of my life as a woman, going through what we've gone through together.
Yeah.
And having that support. So I know that it can be done if it's done wisely. And I got to tell you, it's really, really, really beneficial to have two of your closest friends be a psychologist and a therapist.
Yeah. We come in handy.
Yeah. We are beneficial like that.
My ex used to always say to me, would you stop being a doctor and just be a girl? And I'm like,
no.
But that's
a
what
girl,
I am.
not
That's who I am.
He just took everything.
Everything.
But I'm I am a female who is a doctor. I am a doctor who is female. It's all the same thing, honey.
Girl.
So I am who I am. And deal with it.
We're if the three of us can come together in that badass way, then society as a whole will be able to come together like that in a badass way, despite any monkeys, distractions, fear, complacency, ignorance. All of that cannot win over badass women. That just can't. So
the really good thing is, typically people like that, male or female, but people like that make mistakes.
Right.
I used to tell my colleague, because we had really toxic management, and I said, all regimes fail. All regimes fall sooner or later. Sometimes it takes too long, but all regimes fall because they make stupid ass mistakes and they do stupid ass things. And that's their downfall and their weakness, and they can't help it. Especially, and this is going to sound really sexist, but especially males, because males are very much more reactive than women are.
I love men I love fucking men. I love men that like are
I
Punctuation,
love
dear.
fucking men.
I
love fucking
I love fucking men. I love men who are actual fucking men. The people that we are talking about are not men. They are emotionally unintelligent boys. I love men, so I just want to put that out there for people.
We're all single and we love men.
I love fucking men. I just, yeah, but there's a certain facet of the male population that we are speaking of, and it is not all of you. So,
I will say, ladies, we are coming up on, it's over an hour now, so we're
All
gonna
right,
wrap
we gotta
this up.
stop.
But
we can do
two
this
things.
for
One,
fucking 4
I
hours.
cannot believe I don't think I cussed this.
You did it?
Well,
No,
I'm pretty sure you did.
no, but if I did, it was like, how do I not remember cussing that much? Because usually I drop F-bombs every other word. So I'm just surprised that I was very not vulgar today. It just surprises me. And also, when we get to, that is all going to change when we start talking more about our stupid toxic relationships and shit like that.
Watch
is
as
gonna
a psychologist and a therapist emotionally dysregulate while talking about it.
Yeah, there is no regulation on the vulgarity that will come out. So just putting it out there that I'm very proud of myself. A little disappointed though, because I was like very much more serious. It was a serious topic. I'm not, but I was hoping to kind of.
We needed to have this conversation
Yes,
today. We did.
absolutely. And it was a very serious conversation. It stayed a serious conversation. I have no problems with that. But I need to get out some
We need
some reactive vulgarity.
we need to act a little petty and toxic next time.
Yes,
to,
my pettiness is my pettiness is shaking me. Like it's gotta wait another week. So next week we'll talk some more about we'll get some more toxic.
Whatever we could totally do. Mini podcast